I don't know if I have a full list, but I'm going to try and greet everyone who's here. And if I don't, then all protocol is observed. Deputy Minister Kasel Matale, Deputy Minister of Justice Andries Nel, Deputy Minister of Social Development Mr. Hanif Hendricks, is the right pronunciation? Acting National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, Lieutenant General Puleng Timpane. So I'll just introduce those who are on the podium. General Mkwanazi, who's the Provincial Commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal, but he also now heads up at national level the Priorities Committee on Organized Crime. Then is General Mohlala, who looks after all the ministers, General Sentumule, and of course next to her is our newly minted Acting National Commissioner, General Timpane. We also have General Nkosi, who heads the DPCI, also a crucial structure in the fight against organized crime. We also have Major General Tulare Sekukune, our crime registrar, who does exceptional work in this area. We are able to release the stats, a reliable indication of what's happening with respect to policing and crime in the country because of his technical competence and professionalism. We're very appreciative. So, we meet today to release the official crime stats for the fourth quarter of the 2025 to 2026 financial year, covering the period 1st January to the 31st of March 2026. The figures that will be presented today are not just numbers and statistics. They are a mirror held up to our society. Behind every statistic is a traumatized victim, a distraught family, a community living in fear. I want to take this moment to extend our deepest sympathies to the Molo-Sankwe family following the murder in the Northwest province of an anti-crime activist and traditional healer, Tato Molo-Sankwe. I have just met a group of human rights activists outside today who are themselves raising the issue of the extent to which whistleblowers, human rights activists are vulnerable in our society, murdered without mercy, whether they're serving in the public service as auditors or in the private sector, counselors, anybody who dares to stand up against criminality and corruption. We are saddened to have lost an individual who was committed to fighting crime and corruption while working to strengthen relations between communities and the police. Maximum resources have been deployed to solve this heinous crime. I have been in conversation with the National Commissioner on this matter, and I'm hoping that there will be progress in the investigation. Regrettably, too many people who stand up to crime and corruption, counselors, professionals like auditors and lawyers, are targeted for standing up and for doing the right thing. Strengthening the regime of whistleblower protection must therefore be a priority. The Cabinet has approved the Protected Disclosures Bill for public comment. This is an extremely important initiative which Deputy Minister Andries Nel will speak to, among other initiatives being taken by the government to fight crime and corruption. Since my appointment as the Minister of Police, I have visited numerous police communities across our country affected by crime. I've met and spoken with many people from communities bearing the brunt of the scourge of crime. So I'm very deeply aware of how crime impacts our people's lives, families, and communities. We are here to do our best, our very best, to improve the levels of safety in our society. Fighting crime and improving the levels of safety must remain the country's top priority. The statistics that we're releasing today give us a clearer sense of the scale of the challenge and where it's happening, the factors driving crime and violence, and the trends at national, provincial, and local level across our country. The crime stats are compiled by the SAPS Crime Registrar in line with international standards for statistics. They draw on the crime reported in each of the 1,175 police stations across the country and have been independently assessed and accredited as official statistics. That's why we take a lot of care with the process of releasing these stats. I am planning to ensure that these stats are presented before the Cabinet, that they are sent to all the provincial governments and all the mayors, because I think the stats should inform decision-making across government, across the country. These stats are also population adjusted, using Statistics South Africa's mid-year estimates, so that we can better assess the risk of certain crimes in each province. These figures tell a complex story, one of progress that is real and measurable. And I'm fully aware of the weight of those words, especially in the current moment. So let me repeat, of the progress that is real and measurable over the last few years, reflected in these statistics as well, but also that we continue to be challenged by deep-rooted violence and organized criminality that threatens our people and our democratic institutions. While the reality should never be sugar-coated and can never be sugar-coated, we must also not ignore the gains that hard-working police officers and communities have made together in the fight against crime. I am enormously motivated by meetings I've had with community leaders, with CPFs, with patroller groups across the country who are active in the fight against crime. Those groups are also active as agents of community solidarity, of community agency. It's a very important part of our reality, the activism that one experience, that is a part of the fight against crime. So what are the key trends? Nationally, serious crime is down, but is still at unacceptably high levels. This is exactly the language I'm reminded that I used when I was the MEC of community safety maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And now I'm happy that no one denies that, that crime is unacceptably high. Violent crime, referred to by the police as contact crimes, as there is direct contact between the perpetrator and the victim, has indeed declined by 4.6%. That means 7,405 fewer cases of violent crimes were reported That's an important qualification compared to the same quarter last year. This trend started in 2024, so long before I was appointed, with violent crime having dropped by 10.2% since then, resulting in 17,440 fewer cases reported compared with this compared to this latest quarter. Most strikingly, murder, and that's an important measure of crime patterns, has decreased nationally by 9.5%. In the same quarter of last year, 5,727 people were murdered. That number has come down to 5,181, still too high. That means that 546 fewer lives lost and fewer griever families and friends. Compared to the same quarter in 2024, there were 1,355 fewer murders, or a 20.7% reduction, and that is meaningful. As this is our most reliable crime statistic, we pay particularly close attention to the data and information on the murder rate. It is also heartening to see double-digit decreases in the serious armed robberies that make up the trio crimes. There has been a 24.4% reduction in house robberies. I remember the introduction of a specialized focus on the trio crimes first in Gauteng and then across the country some time ago. And we can see that effective policing can make a big difference. And the trio crimes provide evidence of that fact. I also welcome the slight 2% decrease in kidnappings, but you can just imagine the terrible trauma that families experience when their loved ones are kidnapped. And the people involved are cynical, brutal, violent, and merciless. But nevertheless, the 2% decrease, given the substantial increases in this crime category since 2021 to 2022. I had a conversation a few months ago with the ambassador, the Chinese ambassador in South Africa, and he asked me to follow up several kidnapping cases where there has now subsequently been progress. But recently again, he wrote to me to ask about a 70-year-old man who has now been kept in captivity by kidnappers, Chinese men, for several months. Property-related crimes such as burglary, theft from motor vehicles, and stock theft dropped by 8.5%. Other serious crimes, including general theft and shoplifting, declined by 4.2%. I can indicate that the issue of stock theft is receiving attention. It's a difficult crime to police, but we had an interesting engagement with the authorities in Botswana, and you know that there are several provinces in South Africa with a common border with Botswana, to discuss, among other things, strengthening our relationship to deal with cross-border crime. Botswana, it was my first visit, by the way. Cameroon is a wonderful city, very clean, with good infrastructure. It was really an eye-opening visit for me. And we've agreed to focus particularly on signing a memorandum of agreement with the authorities in Botswana. And we're hoping to sign such agreements across our region, because we also want to focus on regional security. If we're going to deal with stock theft, if we're going to deal with organized crime, then looking at security from a regional point of view is going to be critical. While we need detailed studies to help us better understand the factors behind these declines, In my view, the work of our police officers and communities has played a fundamental and central role. But I must also be clear, the levels of violence and criminality in South Africa remain far too high. A decrease in crime is not the same as achieving community safety. The levels of crime are still unacceptably high, with 58 murders per day on average during this quarter. And I think it's very important for our country in this moment to have an honest conversation about crime. It's not an accident when you look at the patterns that you can see that the levels of crime are particularly high in poor, marginalized, and under-resourced communities. There is clearly a connection between the levels of crime and the lack of development. We cannot look at these questions in isolation. When we talk about crime and policing, we have to talk about development, opportunity, school safety, opportunity for young people, the levels of unemployment, the levels of service delivery in poor communities, which is not what they're supposed to be. And so where local government is struggling, we can see that communities struggle and the levels of crime increase. So our goal is not just to reduce crime, but to ensure that our communities are safe, that they feel that their dignity is protected, that young people have opportunity, that our communities live with dignified lives. Second point, crime patterns show substantial variations across the country. I'm just giving you highlights. The National Commissioner will give you a more detailed analysis of the crime patterns. The crime data also reveals notable provincial disparities and stubborn hotspots. So, of course, that's why we have to use the stats in our decision-making, in the way we prioritize the deployment of policing resources, and that's what we're doing. While Gauteng, the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal all recorded notable decreases in murders in these stats, these are the four provinces that still record over 80% of all the murders in our country. But the risk of being murdered differs vastly across the country. To establish the relative risk, we look at the murder ratio, that is the number of murders per 100,000 people nationally and in each province. During this period, there were 8.2 murders per 100,000 nationally. The Eastern Cape represents the highest risk with 14.3 murders per 100,000 people, followed by the Western Cape with 12.8 murders per 100,000, and then KZN with 8.8. So what does that mean? It actually means that if you live in these provinces, you have a higher risk of being murdered. It's not yet a country of equal opportunity. There's a reason why those provinces continue to record the highest murder rate. So in brief, life is cheaper depending on where you live. While Gauteng records the highest number of murders, the risk of being murdered in that province is half that of the Eastern Cape. Eastern Cape, the levels of violence are very high in that province. You can imagine the impact that it has on our police officers who have to deal with the trauma of policing exceptionally high levels of violence. I've seen some of it over the last few months. Less said, the better, perhaps. The remaining 5 provinces all have lower murder rates than Gauteng, with Limpopo holding the lowest rate of 2.9. And I'm not surprised by that figure, because I can see the Deputy Minister Matala is a very peaceful person. He comes from Limpopo province. I think the people of Limpopo, yes, they are definitely more inclined to peace than to violence. Specific police precincts continue to appear at the top of the rankings for the most serious crimes. Major General Sekukune will present the 30 specific police precincts that record the highest numbers of various serious crime types, while violent crime showed a decrease in most of these police precincts, and that's heartening. A third of them still recorded increases. So we'll continue to focus on those 30 stations. We've increased the priority stations to 50, because I'm convinced that if we focus on those 50 stations, there, of course there's the risk of displacement, but we continue to focus on the 50 stations with all our efforts, with a clear implementation of our policing strategies, of our strategies to deal with crime and violence, GBV and F, for instance, mobilize communities in those areas, then we can have more success. And that's what we're going to be doing in the coming months. These crime precincts are not just places on a map. They are communities where fear has become a daily companion, where women and children plan their lives around this danger, and where honest residents often feel abandoned to gangs and to guns. The stats also reveals that the home where we should be safest is for too many of our people a dangerous place. 1,523 murders occurred in residences of the perpetrator or victim. Nearly half of all rapes in this quarter, 47.2%, took place in the home of a victim or perpetrator. Quite an alarming stat. That is that 4,620 out of 9,782 rapes were not committed in dark alleys by strangers, but in homes by people known to the victim, which also complicates the policing response. Violence in South Africa is not only about strangers attacking strangers. It is about partners, relatives, wives, girlfriends or boyfriends, neighbors, and acquaintances. It is driven by arguments often, jealousy even, road rage, and other interpersonal conflicts. A lot of stress then in our society, a lot of stress that reflects itself in these interpersonal dynamics. In this quarter alone, 898 murders were triggered by arguments and misunderstandings, a further 251 motivated by retaliation, revenge, or punishment, and 299 murders resulted from vigilantism. 2 weeks ago, I think that it was about 2 weeks ago that there was a murder on Barry Hertzog Street. I live in the street right along, parallel to Barry Hertzog. Also one that was where the people were armed, they had an argument, and there was some shooting and at least one fatality. So this is the sobering truth. If we want to reduce violent crime, we must confront the culture of violence also inside the home, the mistaken idea that men must be violent to be respected and that women must put up with the violence to be loved. In fact, history has clearly taught us that violence is destructive and a social problem that can be overcome as society makes progress. Alcohol remains a powerful accelerant of this kind of violence. In this quarter, 7,267 incidents of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, rape, and attempted murder were linked to alcohol use. We must therefore address the toxic role of alcohol abuse in the scourge of violence. The more alcohol that is consumed, particularly on weekends, the more violence we will suffer. So people go out to enjoy themselves on the weekends, and instead of coming home having enjoyed themselves, they risk losing their lives. We need to understand this fact and start taking action to reduce alcohol consumption. I've asked the Civilian Secretariat for Police to take a closer look at the regulations that provide for licensing of liquor outlets and their trading hours, because I am convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that this is an area that needs a stronger focus, and we often, I have to say, don't have the same perspective as the departments that are responsible for liquor regulation. So how do we get that alignment within government to approach liquor regulation, having regard to the causal connection between excessive consumption, particularly at different times in the week, and violent crime? Organized crime. Crime generally, and organized crime in particular, is not evenly spread across the country. It is heavily concentrated in economic hubs and in certain high-risk spaces. Gauteng, the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal continue to contribute the largest share of serious and organized crime. Gauteng remains the epicenter of several forms of violent organized crime. It accounts for 57.1% of all hijackings, 54.8% of all kidnappings, and 48.4% of cash-in-transit robberies. These are not just opportunistic crimes. They are the work of organized criminal syndicates that are highly mobile, heavily armed, and deeply embedded in our economic sectors. They hijack vehicles, extort businesses, and terrorize workers, transporting the salaries and social grants that keep families alive. Extortion is a particularly insidious crime, because where there's extortion, small businesses don't flourish, can't flourish. Our data sample of 469 extortion cases paints a very worrying picture. Protection rackets, including the so-called construction mafia, are spreading, especially in the Western Cape, which accounts for 57 out of 131 sample protection racket cases. These networks do not only steal money, they sabotage service delivery, collapse small businesses, and rob our people of jobs and opportunities. They bleed the state and drive away investment. Of particular concern is the ongoing increase in commercial crimes. This crime category started increasing slowly a decade ago, but steep annual increases have been recorded since the advent of COVID-19. So I think it's very important to try and understand, as we have a conversation about crime, how crime is evolving. Not just think about crime as a constant. So you can see from these stats that social crime figures do show a reduction, but commercial crime is increasing, partly, I think, enabled by technological change. And so the way in which we respond from a policing point of view also has to evolve. And if you talk to the professionals who are sitting in front of me, they will explain that how the police are responding innovatively to the changing patterns of criminality in the country. Much of this is organized crime who exploit vulnerable people and is increasingly happening online and in cyberspace. The increases are particularly concerning as a vast majority of this type of crime is not reported to the police. So we'll see when the National Commissioner speaks, the strong emphasis on modernizing the police through by incorporating technological, the potential that comes with technological capabilities into the way we respond to the challenges that we face with crime, including cybercrime. As I've said before, much organized crime is present in these crime stats, is evident in these crime stats. But you can also see it emerging in the data contained, which we're not reporting today, on reports from the Auditor General, the SIU, the Financial Intelligence Center, and the South African Revenue Service. So we'll have to look at those reports as well to get a fuller understanding of how organized crime is bedeviling our country increasingly. While high-flying and well-dressed criminals amass wealth and are revered, apparently, by those who benefit from their illegal activities. And here there's the paradox. In many of our poorer communities, where there is a lack of economic opportunity, drug peddling becomes a livelihood, a source of income, which makes it more difficult to dismantle the infrastructure of organized crime as shootouts continue in schools, in communities ravaged by gang violence. So what is the way forward? Our response to criminality reflected in these statistics is as follows. First, we will rigorously implement our bold agenda to reset policing. And the National Commissioner will talk a little bit more about the details of that reset agenda. The national decreases in serious violent crimes such as murder, rape, and aggravated robbery are not unimportant, but the levels are still too high, and we need to redouble our efforts, particularly in those precincts that continue to show increases. In too many communities, homes across the country, violence remains high. We know that policing can have a substantially positive impact on community safety from these stats. We also know that there are many thousands of dedicated police officers working under difficult circumstances, often at risk to their own lives. But there is much more that the South African Police Service can and should do if we are going to deal with this challenge going forward. That is why I focused my budget speech early this week on a reset agenda that the Acting National Commission and I are fully committed to. This multi-year strategy will aim to strengthen the fight against organized and violent crime by building a modern, professional, and trusted police service that places the safety of our people first. It foregrounds enhancing the professional and ethical conduct of our police members, overhauling our procurement and supply chain systems, while strengthening our intelligence and investigative capabilities. We must also be modernizing our police stations and reinvigorating community policing across the country. There are some specific areas that are not about Operation Chanele, but need attention. The forensic laboratories, where there are accumulating backlogs, need attention because we're not going to get better results as far as conviction rates are concerned without tackling that challenge. Vehicle management across the country. There isn't a police station where the station commissioners don't complain about the length of time it takes in the garages for simple matters to be resolved, like brake pads. Come back 6 months without brake pads. I mean, this is not there. There is a serious problem around vehicle management in SAPS that needs attention. I've discussed this matter with the National Commissioner. I think infrastructure, I don't think the current model is working optimally, both from a building point of view and from a maintenance point of view. So looking at, does the model of infrastructure delivery and maintenance need to change if we're going to address the concerns of communities as demographic patterns change and so forth. Sometimes you go to an old community like Davidton, it's a long-established township. They've got a police station there that is definitely not fit for purpose. So many years after we are supposed to have had our freedom. And you see that pattern. Sometimes you go to a more recently established community, but the community is growing. A police station was built 10 years ago, no longer fit for purpose. So I think this is a matter that needs attention. In a speech, Lieutenant General Timpani will provide in more details of what we're calling the reset agenda. So I think what I also want to emphasize is the complete alignment of the ministry and police management on our priorities and on the reset agenda, on what needs to be done. That is a prerequisite for the kind of bold change that we want to see. A ministry and police management aligned on what needs to be done. Special attention will be given to bolstering the top 50 crime stations while identifying and sharing good practices from any of our police stations that demonstrate promising results. We will also focus on reinvigorating community policing, as the police need to work with our people at local level to be effective. As I mentioned earlier this week, we will be exploring the viability of implementing and funding a national and provincial community patroller program. I've seen this work. In Gauteng, we had a Take Charge program. Premier Lesufi has a new initiative which does make a difference. In the Western Cape, they used to have a program called Bambanani. It's not just about, it's about community agency. It's about involving our communities, giving them a sense of participation in improving their own safety and security and their own livelihoods. And I believe that the stipends contribute to well-being at the level of the family, because if a family is receiving a pension, a disability grant, stipend, if there are sources of income where especially you have high levels of unemployment, then you're making a contribution not only to community agency, you're making a contribution to community safety, and you are alleviating areas of social distress. So it's not charity. And this is certainly something that a government should do. In middle-class communities can compensate through a market solution, through private security. That's not available to the communities that we represent, the communities that we are most concerned about. So we must do as much as we can as government to address the needs of our people as we see them and experience them. So we are looking, I have a proposal. I asked them some time ago, the Civilian Secretariat, to come up with a funding model, and we have already engaged with the MECs in those provinces to implement a patroller program, and I'm hoping that in the next few months, that's my hope. The department has tried it previously, and then it failed, and we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. But this time, I will make another effort. And as far as I'm concerned, failure in this area is not an option. I want to see a national patroller program implemented in all the provinces. And I don't see funding as an insurmountable constraint. The patrollers will be trained and vetted and then deployed by the local South African Police Service to act in support of the police at hotspots. They can be deployed at pension pay points, where our grandmothers and grandfathers are molested by criminals. They can be deployed to help when school children are going to school or going back home after school. They can be deployed in many areas, areas where women are vulnerable to being attacked, patroller program can complement policing, assist the local, the provincial commissioner, and work under the supervision also of the Community Policing Forum. I can announce today that I will be establishing a police advisory panel with former SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter as the chair, and Dr. Zukiswa Mkolombo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is the Deputy Chair of the Public Service Commission, as the Deputy Chair of the panel. She is completing her doctorate. She might have already completed it, but when I first engaged with her last year, she was still in the process. But she, you know, she's a senior commissioner in the Provincial Service Commission, and she has done a doctorate on the professionalization of the police service. This panel, many of you will remember that the National Planning Commission had recommended that we establish a National Policing Board. The Civilian Secretariat has drafted legislation to this effect, and the police have accepted that that is a proposal that will be implemented. But I don't want to wait for another year, because legislation, the drafting as well as the enactment, takes some time. So we'll establish this interim panel. Its mandate will be to advise the Ministry and the National Commissioner on the reset agenda, focusing on professionalization, focusing on the implementation of the Madlanga Commission recommendations on systemic reform, which they will make in August. And we will accumulate then valuable experience in how that model can work, so that as soon as the legislation is ready and we are able to establish the board, then we will not be starting from scratch. And I'm not taking this initiative without having engaged in proper consultations. The National Commissioner supports this proposal. We will announce the other names in the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping, to establish the panel. Today I'm just announcing the chair and the deputy chair. So I've decided not to wait until August for the final report of the Madlanga Commission, because the areas that require systemic reform, what we're calling the reset, that's already very clear. Nobody here can say clearly procurement in SAPS and in many departments and in many local governments needs a reset. I'm going to leave this matter to more detail to be reflected on by the National Commissioner, but she's already taking action. She's hitting the ground running. And so we are going to foreground procurement reform. We don't have to wait for Justice Madlanga to tell us that we need procurement reform in SAPS. So this panel is a precursor to the National Policing Board, recommended in the National Development Plan, and legislation to this effect is contained in the South African Police Service Amendment Bill, which is yet to come before Parliament. However, as this legislation will take time, well, I've made that point. Second, we will continue to strengthen our capability to tackle organized crime. And I'm very pleased that General Mkhwanazi has accepted the deployment at national level as the chair of the National Priorities Committee on Organized Crime. We have a strategic plan. It's a new plan. Some really quality thinking has been done in SAPS over the last few months. We have clarified the operational structure through we will implement the plan. Now it just needs the energy and leadership of General Mkhwanazi and General Nkosi in the DPCI, under the leadership of our National Commissioner, to implement. And it's going to take time. I know every time I go to Parliament, there's a new question. about they want to know what results we're getting tomorrow. They want to know, parliamentarians must ask these questions. I'm getting indication that I'm talking too long. But I know, and I want to be very clear, that there is no magic bullet, there's no quick fix. The results will come over time. They will come through a proper application of a clear strategy that is properly monitored, and where the leadership of the ministry and SAPS is focused on getting results over time. No quick fixes, but you can hold us accountable over time for improvement, for results. How much time do we have? I can speak. Okay. So we want to tackle organized crime. And of course, we get questions now every day in Parliament about, well, we deployed the army. So where are the results of Operation Prosper? Well, with respect to my parliamentary colleagues, does anybody reasonably think that the deployment of the army is a magic bullet and that the gangs can be defeated with all the problems I've explained? Deeply rooted problems in Mitchell's Plain, Philippi, those gang areas. Does anybody, and now we're in the middle of a gang war. They're killing each other, and they're recruiting young people who don't have alternatives in those communities. No jobs, no prospects, no future. Does anybody think that deploying the army tomorrow is going to immediately get us results? So let's have a proper rational conversation about what can be achieved by the deployment of the army. What we have said is that we are hoping it will give us the space we need to implement this organized crime strategy. And we are saying that all government departments and the provincial governments and local governments concerned in those areas must also carry out their responsibilities to assist in alleviating the plight of our people in those communities. And it's the implementation of that all-government approach and a policing strategy that must be assessed when it comes to seeing whether we're making progress or not. Not simply adopting the posture. It's very easy at the moment to point fingers at the police service because it looks like everybody in the police service is rotten because of the evidence that is being led before the Madlanga Commission. And that is not the true picture. Because if that were the true picture, then we wouldn't be able to be releasing these results. So the speech will be made available. So I've taken a bit of time because I don't just want to read a speech. I want to be able to talk about the real issues. But in any event, so implementing this integrated crime and violence prevention strategy, this is an all-government strategy. It's not a policing strategy. And I think to get all the government departments and all the spheres of government aligned to implement the strategy is a very tall order. In my experience in government, it's the biggest challenge. So even on this one, we say we've got a strategy. The real challenge is implementation, and implementation is not I believe governments all over the world struggle to have alignment across departments and across levels of government. But in the area of safety and security, this is an absolute imperative. So I'm not reading the speech anymore. I think I've tried to make the point. Let me say in conclusion then. My speech writers also have a very long conclusion, so let me see. Okay, the release of the crime stats is not just a quarterly ritual to enhance transparency. It's a resource to be used to enable collective action and to promote safety and security, and not for politicking. I know that we have many parties. And now we've got local government, and there's a lot of politics now, especially. But really, I do plead, when it comes to safety and security, let's have a national approach. Let's build consensus. Let's have a proper discussion based on facts and evidence about what needs to be done. And I want to work with all political parties, those in the GNU and those out of the GNU. But regrettably, my experience is that, what you get is empty rhetoric. And I'm not interested in that. I'm now in my 60s, I'm not looking very far ahead. So please, let's be serious. Let's try and deal with the real problems of our people. I urge all government departments at national, provincial, and local level to interrogate these stats, to assess these stats, examine them, analyze them. They are an important indicator of what the risks are and have to be addressed. They help us understand the trends, the patterns, the factors driving crime and violence in our provinces, in our communities, and across our country. They help us to design better crime prevention initiatives. This is not just an undertaking by government. People and organizations from civil society and indeed the private sector can play a significant and meaningful role. The presidency has prioritized safety and security. There is a structure at national level led by the president, engaging the private sector on meaningful interventions. Private sector is an important partner in this endeavor. And one of the projects underway is a project to modernize policing at station level. If the banks responding to technology could modernize their delivery of financial services, we can also modernize the service delivery at station level. To our police officers, these figures are proof that your work can make a difference. We must now build on this progress with better intelligence, stronger investigations, and uncompromising integrity. In closing, I want to address an issue unambiguously and emphatically. South Africa is a country of laws. The police are expected to enforce these laws without fear or favor. Our laws allow legal, not illegal immigration. And our police must enforce these laws in the country and at our borders. Our laws also include the right to protest. Our laws do not permit vigilantism, criminality, and chaos under the cover of the exercise of the right to protest. The police have a responsibility, and it is my expectation and the expectation of the government that they will maintain public order and public peace, that they will enforce the law, themselves acting within the framework of the law, because we are a country of laws. I can confirm that the Human Rights Commission has written to me about these protests, and I will be responding to their letter. Of course, the Human Rights Commission has a responsibility to express their concerns about the violations of human rights. I will respond to their letter. I can also confirm that the government will be engaging with groups that are organizing protest action on illegal immigration to explain our view and our response on this matter. In the government, we understand the sentiment of our people, to whom our primary responsibility is owed on illegal immigration. But those involved in the protest also have to understand our perspective. Our perspective is that we are a country of laws, and that the police will deal with all forms of criminality. To the people of South Africa, I see the courage you show in reporting crime, testifying before a court of law, standing up to the gangs. I appreciate those people who participate in community policing forums, other voluntary groups, joint patroller groups, and undertake local level crime and violence prevention initiatives. This includes those who provide skills training to young people in sport, music, and culture, after school and on the weekends. All of these voluntary initiatives are valued and most welcome. These stats provide us with guidance. Our task is to transform, to build on these reductions in crime, to ensure that they're sustainable, that it's long-term, and that we deal decisively and fundamentally with the threat posed by organized criminality in our country. We will not rest until the right to safety enshrined in our Constitution is a lived reality in every home, every street, every school, every taxi rank, and every village in this country. Rial Bucha, thank you very much. Let me I think I didn't see General Ntombeni, the Provincial Commissioner. Let me acknowledge his presence as well. I didn't see you on the podium, General, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, the speech has been distributed and we will also be generating infographics. I cannot promise that where the Minister went off script that will be contained anyway. You'll just have to go back to YouTube. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call upon the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mr. Andries Nel, to deliver a message of support.
Program Director, thank you very, very much. Minister, Deputy Ministers, National Commissioner, and the senior officials of the South African Police Service, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. I would just like to start by conveying the very, very warm regards and support of Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, who's currently out of the country attending the BRICS Ministers of Justice meeting. I just want to make 6 brief points. The first is that these crime statistics are being released as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the adoption of our Constitution. We're doing that as a country under the theme, one Constitution, one nation, reflect, renew, and recommit. And I think that's very important because, as Minister Cachalia has pointed out, at the heart of our endeavor to fight crime is guaranteeing the constitutional rights of each and every citizen to a safe and a dignified life. But secondly, the task of combating crime, and in particular organized crime, is, as President Cyril Ramaphosa said in this year's State of the Nation address, probably the most urgent task in defense of our constitutional democracy. Because organized crime, and in particular through its infiltration of our security agencies, has become, in his words, the most urgent or the biggest threat to our constitutional democracy. Second point is that we're here to demonstrate in person the fact that as a justice, crime prevention and security cluster, we believe in an integrated, collaborative, cooperative approach to fighting crime. That criminal justice system value chain starts within the community, as Minister Cachalia has pointed out. It speaks to the social and economic conditions under which the people of South Africa live. The Department of Social Development, here represented by Deputy Minister Hanif Hendricks plays an important role. Our schools play an important role in inculcating values. Our local government plays an important role in the environment by ensuring that that environment is safe, hygienic, well lit. Those agencies that are responsible for the issuing of liquor licenses play an important role. And last but certainly not least, our community policing fora. The South African Police Service charged with investigating crime and effecting arrests, the National Prosecuting Authority responsible for prosecuting crime, Legal Aid South Africa responsible for providing the constitutionally guaranteed right to legal representation, and ultimately the Department of Correctional Services. But after the Department of Correctional Services has done its job, we are back again to the community, amongst others also to ensure that those who have transgressed rehabilitate and reintegrate. And therefore, we are working as the department. The fourth point I want to make is that we're trying to help that integration through the integrated justice system. It is a program that seeks to ensure that all of the technological systems of our different departments are able to speak to each other seamlessly in real time, from arrest to conviction and incarceration. The fifth point is that we are busy as a department, together with others in the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security cluster, to review our hopelessly outdated Criminal Procedure Act of 1977. That is a very urgent task being undertaken by the South African Law Reform Commission. We hope that there will be legislation by the end of this year, by October. The work is at a very, very advanced stage, and we are pushing them very hard to do so even faster. The sixth point is that one of the most important pieces of legislation that we have developed and introduced is the amended Protected Disclosures Bill, more commonly known as the Whistleblower Protection. That draft legislation incorporates the recommendations of the Zondo Commission and the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, formerly chaired by none other than Professor Kachalia. What we seek to do with that legislation is to ensure that whistleblowers that play an indispensable role, especially in the context of organized crime and corruption, feel safe and secure to come forward and make disclosures. We hope to do that firstly by strengthening the provisions that protect confidentiality of persons and of the information that they provide. Secondly, to extend the operation of the Witness Protection Act to whistleblowers. Thirdly, to provide legal assistance to whistleblowers under defined conditions. Fourthly, to make provision for a complaint mechanism that would be headed by a retired judge. Sixth, to create a central database for protected disclosures that would ensure that those disclosures, one, are routed to the appropriately trained officials to deal with, but secondly, also to enable monitoring of the implementation, of effecting, investigating those protected disclosures, which in terms of the Act would need to be acknowledged within 5 days, a decision taken in 10 days, and an investigation completed within 12 months. The bill also seeks or criminalizes the disclosure of the identity or the content of a protected disclosure by sentences of between 10 and 15 years. And lastly, the bill provides for incentives to whistleblowers. Up to 25% of the amount recovered from, as a result of a whistleblower's disclosure, can be ordered by a court to go to that whistleblower, or if there's more than one whistleblower, for it to be divided amongst them. So I think we see that as a major step forward. The bill was approved by Cabinet for publication for public comment. The deadline was the 14th of May. I'm informed that we received about 105 substantive submissions, which are being processed by the department, and we hope that before the end of the year, legislation would be going back to Cabinet and to Parliament. Lastly, I conclude by saying that the National Prosecuting Authority, under the leadership of Advocate Andy Motibe, and the Special Investigating Unit, under the leadership of Mr. Leonard Legeto, I think have really stepped up and are playing a major role in assisting the fight against crime. Advocate Motibe has, in the very short space that he has been in office, I think started changing the culture and the orientation of the National Prosecuting Authority in a very positive way. Also recently, the President and the Minister of Justice have filled a number of vacant posts that were being acted upon, including the head of the National Prosecuting Service. And I think all of those efforts were demonstrated clearly when earlier in the year the crime stats for the third quarter were released. And I want to express my sincere appreciation to the Minister and to the Civilian Secretariat that at the same time that they released the crime stats, they also released statistics around convictions. And just to say that for the third quarter, 199 accused persons were sentenced to life imprisonment, and that included 51 murderers and 139 rapists. 15 accused persons were sentenced to 40 years or more. Those included 10 murderers and 2 rapists. 237 accused persons were sentenced to 20 years and more. That included 94 murderers and 105 rapists. So I think through that joint work between the police and the National Prosecuting Authority, the results are starting to show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Nel. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to call upon the SAPS Crime Registrar, Major General Tulares Kukune. We will share the presentation as it's been made. Major General.
While we are busy setting up, let me take this opportunity to greet the Minister of Police, Professor Kachalia, the Deputy Minister of Justice, Mr. Nel, and the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Mr. Hendricks, and at the expense of time, allow me to say all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, the crime statistics that we are releasing today covers the period from January 2026 up to March 2026. This is the fourth quarter of the 2025-2026 financial year. So without waste of time, let me go into the details of the summary presentation that we start with. The Minister has already covered most of the issues that are reflected in the Q4 crime statistics. I will just simply rush through the numbers as they have already been covered. What is interesting to note in summary is that across all the 7 crime categories that make up what we call conduct crimes, we have achieved reductions across all those particular crimes. Starting with the murder, we have recorded 5,181 murders. That is a reduction of 546 counts compared to the same period in the previously comparable period. But I need to emphasize and indicate that there is some kind of noise in these statistics that we are talking about, the 5,181, because they also include the 14 children that were killed in an accident in Vanderbijl Park. So when we talk about these murders, we also need to take into consideration that even though some of the crimes do not necessarily align themselves to the description in terms of the criminal law, but in some instances, the courts do overrule us, and in these numbers, as I've indicated, we have included those 14 murders of the children that were involved in an accident when a taxi driver drove on the wrong side of the road and ended up being involved in a collision with a truck. So these are some of the things that maybe we need to clarify in terms of the crime statistics, which should take precedence. Should we follow the normal description of a crime, or should we also be taking into consideration at the end of the day what the courts will be deciding on? But I guess it's a debate for another day. Further to that, when we look at the provincial distribution, we observe that all the provinces, with the exception of Northwest, have recorded a decrease. Northwest was the only province which has recorded an increase in terms of the murders, that is 271 counts. The color coding indicates that these are the total numbers that had been reported in that particular province, and if it is color-coded green, it indicates that that number is less compared to the previous comparable period. And when it is color-coded red, it indicates that that number is more than the previously recorded period. It does not imply that this is the difference between what was recorded in this quarter compared to the previous comparable period. It just simply indicates that it is 271 in the case of Northwest, and this number is higher than the numbers that were reported by the province of the Northwest in the previous period. Then picking up the pace, sexual offenses, we recorded the reduction of 862 counts, and all the provinces have recorded a decrease. Then moving on to attempted murder, we had recorded a reduction of 69 counts, and 4 of the 9 provinces have recorded increases. Then moving on to assault with the intention to commit grievous bodily harm, the reduction is 200, and 4 provinces have recorded increases. Common assault, the reduction is 157, and again 4 provinces have recorded an increase. Then common assault, we have, I think it's common robbery, we have 618 reduction, and only 1 province has recorded an increase, which is the province of the Eastern Cape. Then lastly, we have robbery with aggravating circumstances, where we had 4,953 counts less compared to the previous period, and all the provinces have recorded decreases. Then moving on to the subcategory of sexual offenses, we have, starting with the rape, we have recorded 906 counts less compared to the previous comparable period, and all the 9 provinces have recorded decreases. Sexual assault, we unfortunately recorded 78 counts more compared to the previous comparable period, and then attempted sexual offenses, 13 counts more. And then for contact sexual offenses, we have recorded 47 counts less, and only 2 provinces have recorded increases in terms of the contact sexual offenses. That is your Eastern Cape with 27, and the Northern Cape with 12. Limpopo recorded the same number as in the previous comparable period, and hence it is color-coded blue. Then for the subcategories of robbery with aggravating circumstances, for the first time in a very long time, we are observing that all the trio crimes, that is your carjacking, robbery at residential premises, and robbery at non-residential premises, have gone down for all the 3 crimes, and hence the reduction in the trio crimes is 2,660. And all the provinces have recorded decreases across carjacking, robbery at residential premises, and robbery at non-residential premises. They have all recorded decreases. We did not have any bank robberies, and for robberies of cash in transit, we have recorded a reduction of 4 counts compared to the previous comparable period, whereas in the previous period we had 35 counts. Currently, we have recorded 31 cash in transit robberies, that is 4 counts lower. For truck hijacking, we have recorded a reduction of 2 counts, and then that the provinces that have recorded increases is the province of the Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and the province of the Northwest. Then moving on to the second part, which complete the big table, we have recorded a reduction in terms of the 2 crimes that make up the broad category, which is called contact-related crimes, with arson reducing by 36 counts, malicious damage to property, a reduction of 354, and contact-related crimes, the broad category, reducing by 390. We achieved a clean sweep in terms of the category called property-related crimes, leading with a reduction of burglary at non-residential premises, a reduction of 1,204, burglary at residential premises, a reduction of 3,075, theft of motor vehicle and motorcycle, a reduction of 786, theft out of or from motor vehicle, a reduction of 1,368, then stock theft, we have recorded a reduction of 554, and the sum total of these property-related crimes is a reduction of 6,987. The last category in terms of these crimes we are called other serious crimes. Of the 3 crimes that make up this category, only one, that is commercial crime, has recorded an increase. The other 2, which is all theft not mentioned elsewhere, and shoplifting, have achieved reductions of 2,697 and 591 respectively. The increasing commercial crime has recorded an increase of 1,423. Then the proxy for proactive policing initiative, termed crime detected as a result of police action, whereas the desired trajectory of change in the initial 17 community reported crimes was a green. In this instance, we want these crimes to be on the increase because they show that these are proactive policing initiatives. We have achieved more in terms of drug-related crimes, 5,697 counts more compared to the previous period. Driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, 4,567. And where we did not achieve the desired trajectory of change was in the illegal possession of firearm and ammunition and the sexual offenses detected as a result of police action, where we are 264 and 147 to the negative. And that gives the summary of the table of the contact crimes. Then we move on to the individual crimes. I will pick up the pace because I think I've already touched on most of these. What we observe here, we just looking at the contact crimes and indicate that Of the 9 provinces for contact crimes, the only province that had recorded an increase is the province of KwaZulu-Natal, with 44 counts more. The minister has already talked about the contribution of these 4 provinces to the total of the crimes, and in the order of high to low contribution of the top 4 is that Gauteng is the province which contribute the highest number of contact crimes, that is 25.3. Then the second highest is shared equally by KwaZulu-Natal and the Western Cape, which each contribute 8.3%, and the fourth is the province of the Eastern Cape, which contribute 10.3%. Then in terms of the top 30 stations for the contact crimes, I'll only talk of the top 10 contact crime stations based on the total volumes of the sum total of the contact crimes that have been reported in those respective stations. I'll only indicate that in terms of the top 10 contact crime stations, 6 of these stations are in the province of the Western Cape. And this is Mfuleni at number 2, Mitchell's Plain at number 3, Delft at number 4. Then we move on to number 6, that is Nyanga, which is also in the Western Cape. And then at number 9 and 10 is Cape Town Central and Kraaifontein. Those are the top 6 stations in the top 10 from the province of the Western Cape. The other remaining stations in the top 10 are from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which contributes 3 stations to the top 10, and 1 station from the province of Gauteng, which is a Tembisa station at number 8. I think one of the things that I forgot to mention for those that are not familiar with the layout of the crime stats presentation is that the first column of the table indicates the position of that particular station when one takes into consideration the total number of the stations in the country. And the second column, it indicates the position of that particular station when only the province within which that station is taken into consideration. So when a station is number 1 at the national level, obviously it will also be number 1 at the provincial level. However, when you look at number 2, which is Mfuleni, it is number 2 at the national level. However, it is number 1 within the province of the Western Cape. So this is how this table is read, and the color coding simply indicates whether that particular station has recorded an increase or a decrease. The decrease would be indicated by a color code green, and the increase will be indicated by the color code red. Then moving on to the murders, over the 3 periods that make up the quarter, that is January, February, and March, all these months we have recorded decreases in terms of the murders. 125 reduction in the month of January, 228 reduction in the month of February, 193 in the month of March, and the only province that has recorded an increase within for the murders is the province of the Northwest with 43 counts. What we had just seen is the total number of murders that had been reported within that particular province. Now, as the minister indicated, when we bring into context the total population within those particular provinces, we then look at what is called murder per capita in the respective provinces, because we also use the mid-year population estimates to make sure that we compare apples with apples by computing the per capita murder. The minister indicated that the safest province, and also alluded to the character of DM Matale, that is from Limpopo, is calm, and it is also reflected in the statistics that the possibility of being a victim of murder is the least in the province of Limpopo. So in terms of investments and all these other things and quality of life, I think we should also be looking at moving to Limpopo, as I'm also from the family of Sekokune, which is also based in Limpopo. Then moving on to the province with the highest per capita murders. These are the provinces of the Eastern and the Western Cape. I think it might have something to do with the coastal areas, because we have the Eastern Cape with the highest per capita murder of 14.3 per 100,000, and the Western Cape is the second highest with 13 per 100,000. So this gives you what the minister referred to as the risk factor of a person being ending up being a victim of murder within the respective provinces. Then we tried to go into the details in terms of what could be the causative factors of these murders. We draw a sample from the total reported number of murders, and we try to look into the statements, what was attributable to the murders that we are observing. We had 5,181 murders in this current quarter, and we drew a sample of 4,814, which literally is almost the total population. That is 93% of the murders. Then when we look into what were the causative factors, touching only on the few that are at the top, we saw that 898 of the murders were attributable to arguments and misunderstanding. Then 299 from the 4,814 were attributable to vigilantism and mob justice. I'll then continue and touch on the next three, which is your gang-related murders. We saw that there were 242 murders that were attributable to gang-related factions, and of these 242, 225 was in the province of the Western Cape, and the other provinces which indicated gang-related murders was Gauteng with a distant 10 and the Eastern Cape with 3. We also had 235 murders attributable to robberies. Then at the fourth from the bottom, we had murders of law enforcement and security guards in the line of duty, that it was indicated that these include your securities and all those people that are involved in law enforcement. Then we saw that 20 of these people were killed in the line of duty. And then we also had 8 police officers that were killed but not in the line of duty. Then we move on and look at the places of occurrence. The minister talked about the places of occurrence. What I would like to emphasize on this particular table is that if you look at the same sample size, and if you take only the top 3 places of occurrence and do a percentage contribution, it shows that 90% of the murders have a social element to it, because the public places, street open and recreational and beaches and parks contribute 54%, and now you add the residences of the perpetrator, it contributes 32%. Now you add liquor outlets, it contributes 3%. And if you add these 3 percentages, they add up to 90%. So most of our murders have a social element to it, maybe either in the manner in which we socialize or whatever the case might be. This is the biggest problem that we see, that it is the highest contributing place of occurrence in our murder statistics. Then we look at the instances where multiple people were killed. I indicated the issue of the 14 children that were killed in an accident. This did form part of the crime statistics. As indicated, it has contributed to the total murder stats, 14 victims and 3 attempted murder charges to the current stats that we are releasing. Then we also had 9 victims that were killed in an extortion-related incident in Philippi East. We also had 6 victims that were killed in taxi violence-related issues in Meyerton, and this incident also added to 16 charges to attempted murder. We also had 5 victims that were killed in Atteridgeville at a tuck shop, and we also had 5 victims that were killed in illegal mining-related issues in Bronkhorstspruit. The weapon of choice that is used in the commission of the murders from the same sample size of 4,814, and again, I need to caution that this does not mean that there is a one-to-one relationship between a committed murder and a firearm, as we have seen that in some instances it is possible that one firearm might be used to murder a number of people. So the weapon of choice from the 4,814 counts, it was indicated that the firearm was used in 2,120 of the murders. The second highest weapon of choice was knives, which were used in 744 incidents of murders, and the most of these happened in the province of the Western Cape, which attributable the instrument of murder as a knife in 163 counts. Then murders of police official, we have recorded a reduction of 14 counts. We currently have 8 police officers that were killed, which is a reduction of 14 counts from the previous comparable period, and currently all the police officers that were killed whilst they were off duty. Attacks of rural communities, we had 9 counts of attacks of rural communities, and of these people that were killed on farms, 5 were residents on farms and 4 were farmers. The provincial distribution of the 5 people that were resident on farms was 1 in the Eastern Cape, 2 in Gauteng, and 2 in the Western Cape. Those that met the criteria of a farmer is 4, and the provincial distribution is 1 each in the provinces of Free State, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape. Then the rape statistics, as I've indicated, we have recorded decreases across all the 9 provinces and across all the months that make up this quarter. And in terms of the provincial distribution of contribution to the rape statistics, the highest contributing province is the province of KwaZulu-Natal with 21.2%. The second highest is Gauteng with 18.8%. The third is the Eastern Cape with 15.2%, and the fourth is the Western Cape with 11.3%. Then again, the same analogy that was used in terms of the murders, where we look at the per capita for the murders, whereas for the murders, the safest province was Limpopo. In terms of the rapes, the province with the highest per capita rape is the province of Gauteng, with 11 people likely to end up as victims per 100,000. And again, the Eastern Cape features there in terms of the per capita for rapes with 23 per 100,000 victims. Then for the provincial distribution of places of occurrence, we drew a sample of 6,927. And from this sample, we saw that 4,620 of the rapes happened at the residences of the perpetrator, 1,320 in public places, 93 in educational institutions. Then the rest can be read from the slide. The use and abuse of alcohol, we saw that from this sample, alcohol was used in 7,267 of the various crime types, 231 in the murders, 576 in attempted murders, 1,388 in terms of the rapes, and assault GBH 5,072. Specific places where alcohol is being sold, like your liquor outlets, shebeens, and pubs, 160 of the murders happened at such facilities, 65 of the rapes happened within those facilities, and 4,197 of assault GBH counts happened at the place where alcohol is being sold. Then we look at the murders and rape at the educational premises. The color coding is the rape is indicated as orange and the blue is for the murders. We saw that there were 93 rapes that have taken places in school, and 8 of the murders happened in school. One word of caution is that this is the place of occurrence. It does not necessarily imply that the victim of the rape or the victim of the murder was a learner or a school-going person. It simply indicates that this is the place where the rape or the murder happened. When you go onto the SAPS website where we will upload the statistics, we give the details of the victims in terms of who was the victim in a particular rape and who was the perpetrator also. Then as a proxy for GBVF, we look at the domestic violence related incidents. What we have observed here is that there were 233 murders where there was some kind of domestic relationship between the victim and the perpetrator, and most of these murders where there was such a relationship happened in the province of KwaZulu-Natal with 57 counts, Eastern Cape at number 2, 42 murders, the Western Cape at number 3 with 34 murders. Then for the rapes where there was a domestic relationship, the total was 1,016, and again the province of KwaZulu-Natal was the one which had the highest number of rapes that involved domestic violence or domestic relationship. That is 202 counts. The second highest is the Western Cape with 167, and third is the province of Gauteng with 161 counts. Carjacking, we recorded decreases across all the 9 provinces. I won't go into the details of that. And when we look at the robberies of cash in transit, we had 4 counts less, as I've indicated from the previous table. How they happened, it was 18 of the cash in transit robberies happened while the armored vehicle was on the road, and the provincial distribution is that 8 was in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal had 6, Northwest had 3, and Limpopo had 1. We also had 11 cross-pavement incidents, which the provincial distribution is Gauteng 6, Mpumalanga 2, Western Cape 2, KwaZulu-Natal 1. And in all these incidents, the method that was used, especially when the armored vehicle was on the road, the method that was used to access the cash was to bomb the armored vehicle. Then truck hijacking, the provinces that had recorded increases is the province of the Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northwest. The Western Cape reported the same number as in the previous comparable period. Kidnappings, the minister has touched on that, and the provinces which had recorded increases in terms of the kidnapping is the Free State with 8 counts more, Gauteng with 38 counts more, Limpopo 14 counts more, Mpumalanga 64 counts more, and the Northern Cape with 2 counts more. Then we have extortion, and we also looked at the types of extortions. From the sample size of 469, we determined that these were financial extortions. 69 of these ransom was demanded. There was a threat to damage or keep the victim in the property in 12 of the incidents. Then we also had 234 which involved protection rackets, including construction mafias, etc. In 83 of these, protection fee was demanded. In 31, taxi-related or demand from motorists for transporting passengers was involved. Then the places of, that were targeted mostly were taxi-related, 33 counts, spaza shops in 20 counts, construction sites in 13 counts, and in total we had 131 types of businesses that we can identify where these protection rackets operated. Then we have what is called the core diversion. This will be instances where the resources of the police are used to police other events that are not necessarily the core of the policing. We had 481 incidents that were termed as unrests, and we also had 1,082 which were termed as peaceful incidents, which required the presence of police. And this is just a summary of what the picture looked like. This is the last slide, but before I close this presentation, I need to go back to a thorny issue that has been coming on for a number of years, specifically related to crimes against women and children. I think in the release of the Q4 in the previous financial year, we kept the release of crimes against women and children because we had a hunch that these numbers were artificially inflated, mainly based on the use of the variable sex and age. We then stopped the release of these statistics. We put a note onto the SAPS website, and we started doing some investigations. And the outcome of those investigations confirmed our suspicion that these numbers are artificially inflated. And this was a tedious exercise which we had to rely on labor-intensive methods to review all these dockets that had murder, rape, and involved children. And I would just like to give a summary of what our findings were for crimes against women. In 2023, we said that 969 women were murdered. In 2024, we said 928. In 2025, it was 1,040. That's when we stopped because we knew that something was wrong. Because when you add the sum total of the respective population, the number or the sum total exceeded the sum of the total population. We then did this labor-intensive exercise of verifying each and every incident. And the numbers that we came up with in the current round is 590. So if you look at this, in essence, we can safely assume that the number of murders that we had initially said this was the total number of murders is almost doubled because of the issues of the incorrect capturing of age and sex. We will continue doing this exercise until we find a way in which it can be system-driven, but that will not preclude our own quality assurance checks. Then the rapes for women, in 2023, we said 7,861 women were victims of rape. In 2024, we said 7,693. 2025, we said 7,932. Then we stopped. We did a quality check, and the numbers that we got this time around is 5,325, meaning there was plus minus 2,000 or so rapes that were incorrectly classified. So when we advise that we are stopping the publication of a particular variable within the stats, we know what we are talking about. We are informed by years of experience that my team and I have, that these numbers do not make statistical sense. So allow us space to apply our technical knowledge so that when we publish the numbers, we know that we are not misleading the country. It shouldn't be that the timeliness of the statistics should supersede the accuracy and the correctness of the statistics. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Major General Tulares Kukune. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, I would like to call upon, in the Minister's words, the newly minted Acting National Commissioner who has hit the ground running, Lieutenant General Buleng Dingpan.
The Acting Minister of Police, Mr. Ferrios Kashalia, the Deputy Minister of Justice, Mr. Nel, Deputy Minister of Social Development present here today, Mr. Hendricks, the Deputy National Commissioners, Divisional Commissioners and Provincial Commissioners who are present, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today marks my first briefing as the Acting National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, at a significant and prudent moment of turning the tide and resetting the agenda and direction of policing in the Republic of South Africa. This moment demands decisive leadership. It demands honesty. It demands courage, and above all, it demands action. South Africans want safer communities. They want law and order restored. They want a police service that is accountable, that is disciplined, that is capable, professional, ethical, and responsive. As the leadership of SAPS, we fully understand the weight of this responsibility. Today, we are not merely presenting crime statistics. We are outlining a decisive turning point in policing, anchored on the SAPS reset agenda, as articulated by the Acting Minister of Police, Mr. Ferrios Kashalia, during the budget vote in Parliament on the 19th of May 2026. This reset agenda is a program of institutional renewal, operational recovery, strengthened command and control, ethical leadership, and the rebuilding of public trust in policing. The statistics presented here today indicate encouraging reduction in several priority crime categories, particularly in crimes against the person. We have noted contact crimes declined by 4.6%, rape cases have declined by 8.5%, with robbery with aggravating circumstances declining by 15.6%. This improvement was further influenced by the reduction in trio crimes, including cash-in-transit robberies, which declined by 4 incidents. Ladies and gentlemen, these reductions are not accidental. They are the direct outcome of intensified policing operations, intelligence-led interventions, strengthened deployments, integrated law enforcement coordination, and the relentless execution of Operation Chanela across the country. Operation Chanela continues to deliver measurable results. Since its inception 3 years ago, more than 2.2 million suspects have been arrested for various crimes. From January to April this year alone, SAPS has conducted over 6,000 high-density operations nationwide, resulting in the arrests of over 218,000 suspects, including over 31,000 wanted suspects linked to serious and violent crimes such as murder and rape. The highest number of arrests related to drug offenses, with over 31,000 suspects arrested for possession of drugs and over 3,000 suspects arrested for dealing in drugs. Police have also arrested 1.7 suspects for murder, over 1,000 for attempted murder, and over 2,000 for rape. During these operations, SAPS seized over 1,900 firearms, with 24,502 rounds of ammunition also seized, over 12,000 dangerous weapons, as well as over 2 million in cash seized, recovered 686 stolen vehicles, and also arrested 19,166 illegal immigrants. Members of the media, meticulous detective work resulted in the following convictions during the 25-26 financial year. We have seen a total of 774 accused persons were sentenced to life imprisonment, including 204 convictions for murder and rape, as well as 67 accused persons receiving sentences of 40 years and above, comprising of 38 murder convictions as well as 11 rape convictions. 127 accused persons were sentenced to between 30 and 39 years imprisonment, including 47 for murder as well as 36 for rape. A total of 1,000 accused persons received sentences ranging between 20 and 29 years of imprisonment, of which 422 were convicted for murder and 426 for rape. 3,967 accused persons were sentenced between 10 and 19 years, including 1,102 murder convictions and 860 rape convictions. A total of 5,753 accused persons received sentences of between 5 and 9 years of imprisonment, including 595 convictions for murder and 415 for rape. Major takedowns included organized extortion syndicates in Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal, cash in transit conspiracies in Limpopo, kidnapping syndicates operating across provincial boundaries, and drug trafficking networks operating through ports of entry and transport corridors. A significant breakthrough was the recent discovery and dismantling of one of the biggest illegal drug manufacturing laboratories in the Northwest Province, where drugs and equipment valued at more than 250 million were confiscated. This operation sends a clear and uncompromising message that organized crime will be pursued relentlessly and dismantled decisively. However, despite these gains, levels of violence in certain provinces remain deeply concerning. Gauteng continues to record the highest crime volumes nationally, despite downward trends in several priority crimes, while KwaZulu-Natal remains heavily affected by violent organized criminality and extortion-related violence, notwithstanding operational progress. The Western Cape recorded reductions in priority crimes. However, it continues to battle entrenched gang violence, while parts of the Eastern Cape, Northwest, and Mpumalanga remain under pressure from violent crimes linked to illegal firearms, alcohol abuse, and organized criminal networks. This reality demands intensified action and not complacency. Members of the media, the reset agenda we are executing is a decisive program of institutional reform and operational renewal. The implementation of this reset agenda will firmly be anchored on 3 strategic pillars, and I will outline them. Firstly, reframing police reputation through operational integrity, restoring discipline amongst our ranks, professionalism, ethical conduct, and operational excellence across every level of SAPS. The credibility of this organization will be rebuilt through visible action, accountability, and consistent service delivery. Secondly, we are going to build public trust, because effective policing cannot exist where confidence in law enforcement has been eroded. We are rebuilding trust through transparency, responsiveness, consequence management, visibility, as well as constitutional policing. Thirdly, we are going to strengthen community partnerships and engagements, as the Minister had outlined, recognizing that safer communities require collaboration between police, communities, business, civil society, faith-based organizations, youth formations, and all sectors of society. Crime prevention must become a shared national responsibility. These pillars will guide the rebuilding of SAPS and shape the future of policing in South Africa. To this end, the implementation of mandatory vetting and lifestyle audits for SAPS senior management by the State Security Agency signals a firm commitment for restoring integrity, discipline, and accountability within the organization. All lieutenant generals, including myself, and senior managers on this podium have already submitted to the revetting process, while the next phase involving major generals is also underway. This process will extend across all levels, including police stations and support environment, and this will be led by risk and integrity unit within the South African Police Service as part of decisive institutional renewal to cleanse the organization, restore public confidence, and ensure that SAPS fulfills its constitutional mandate with professionalism, credibility, and integrity. At the center of this reset agenda is the restoration of command and control throughout SAPS. We are rebuilding operational authority from station level to national level. We are strengthening oversight. We will also improve response capabilities, enhancing coordination and restoring professionalism in the execution of policing duties. The operational foundation of SAPS is firm and capable. The building blocks of this reset agenda must now rise to the heights that restores hope, rebuild confidence, strengthen police morale, and reposition policing as a trusted pillar of our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, one of our foremost priorities is the intensified fight against organized crime. The State of the Nation address directed that organized crime must be confronted decisively and dismantled comprehensively. We are responding to that directive with agency and force. Organized crime threatens national security, economic stability, investor confidence, and community safety. It fuels extortions, kidnappings, gang violence, illegal mining, drug trafficking, cash in transits, as well as infrastructure theft and corruption. We are therefore strengthening specialized operational capabilities, enhancing intelligence coordination, deploying additional resources to organize crime investigations, and intensifying multidisciplinary law enforcement operations. To this end, Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi has commenced with his duties of coordinating this national role together with the multidisciplinary teams of experts. Crime intelligence reforms are also underway to restore integrity, improve analytical capability, strengthen vetting processes, modernize technology systems, and repositioning of intelligence as the strategic nerve center of the proactive policing. The filling of critical vacant posts within crime intelligence will be prioritized as part and parcel of this reform strategy. Equally important are reforms within our detective and forensic environments. We are investing in forensic modernization, strengthening detective training, re-enlisting experienced investigators, improving case management systems, and expanding specialized investigative capacity. The expansion of the recently launched KwaZulu-Natal Forensic Laboratory will significantly enhance our ability to respond to violent crimes, gender-based violence and femicide, organized crime, and drug-related offenses. This project will also reduce forensic backlogs, particularly DNA analysis, and accelerate the finalization of cases. Members of the media, modern policing requires modern technology. Criminals are adapting rapidly, and SAPS must remain ahead of evolving criminal threats. We are driving a comprehensive technology enhancement strategy that places innovation at the center of policing. This includes evidence management systems, crime analytics, surveillance enhancements, forensic technologies, as well as data integrity and improved operational communication systems. We have set a firm timeline. By the end of Q3 of this financial year, we want to see the delivery of body-worn cameras and other technological infrastructure to improve service delivery through modernization and effectiveness. At the same time, we are strengthening our supply chain management environment and issues surrounding financial governance and controls to reinforce accountability. As part of this reform process, SAPS will undertake a supply chain management overhaul process with the support and technical expertise of the Government Technical Advisory Center, commonly known as GTEC, to strengthen procurement systems, improve efficiency and enhance transparency and ensure that there is value for money. The strengthening of visible policing remains central to improving frontline service delivery. Priority resources continue to be directed to high crime police stations, particularly the top 30 and the top 50 police stations, to enhance visibility, response capability, and operational readiness. To further strengthen command and control, the Deputy National Commissioner for Visible Policing, together with the provincial commissioners, will have to intensify provincial visits as well as station visits and engage with station commanders to enforce accountability, operational discipline, and responsive policing at all stations. SAPS will accelerate the filling of critical vacancies and the recruitment and training of 11,000 new police constables to strengthen station manpower and operational capacity. At the same time, our Human Resource Management Department will move with speed on key priorities aimed at investing in human capital, including leadership development, specialized training, skills retention, and strengthening critical policing capabilities across the organization. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, this reset agenda also demands moral courage. The Commission's recommendations task team continues to make progress in implementing interventions arising from ongoing Commission's processes. Since its establishment, the task team has secured the arrest and charging of 9 suspects in various cases, including senior municipal officials, SAPS members, SNDF officials, and former Special Task Force member and a private advocate. 2 accused remain in custody. 6 are out on bail, while 1 has turned state witness in terms of Section 204. Prosecutor-guided investigation remain ongoing with additional high-profile cases at an advanced stage. This demonstrates that SAPS is committed to accountability, integrity, and the rule of law. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to highlight progress on this matter of public interest as part and parcel of the implementation of the reset agenda. A total of 33 SAPS employees are currently undergoing disciplinary processes linked to the evidence arising from the IDEC investigations, the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, and forensic investigations into alleged procurement irregularities, and this included the Medicare 24 contract. Of these, 19 members are implicated in the Medicare 24 procurement processes. Currently, we have 14 members that remaining on precautionary suspension, and 7 members who have been served with notices of intended suspension or temporary transfer pending consideration of their representations. At the same time, we must protect and support the overwhelming majority of honest and dedicated men and women in blue who continue to serve this country with honor, integrity, and courage under extreme difficult conditions. The attacks and killings of police officers remain deeply concerning. Through the police safety strategy, we are strengthening tactical readiness and improving officer safety protocols, reinforcing operational procedures and enhancing support for members on the front line. The killing of police officers is a direct attack on the authority of the state and the safety of communities. It is concerning that during the 25-26 financial year, 71 police killings incidents claimed the lives of 74 of our members, and 10 members were killed between 1 January and 31 March 2026 alone. SAPS remains resolute in ensuring that those responsible for these killings face the full might of the law, with 96 arrests effected during the financial year and a further 8 arrests during the 4th quarter. I want to address our police members out there. To every honest police officer serving this country, the leadership sees you. We value you and we stand firmly behind you. You are the defenders of our democracy. You are the guardians of law and order. You are the frontline protectors of the people of South Africa. Your sacrifices are not unnoticed, and your service remains vital to the stability and future prosperity of this nation. During the 4th quarter, significant progress was also made in securing convictions and lengthy prison sentences against perpetrators of gender-based violence and femicide. We noted 255, 9 years, 148 who received sentences between 10 and 19 years, with 75 perpetrators who were sentenced to 20 years and above. 71 perpetrators received life imprisonment. Members of the media, policing alone cannot defeat crime. Public trust and community partnership remains essential. The reset agenda places communities at the center of safety and crime prevention. We are strengthening community policing forums and deepening partnership with civil society, business, faith formations, as well as youth structures and community organization. Communities must become active partners in intelligence gathering, crime prevention, and social mobilization against criminality. Our resolve to strengthen community partnerships reinforces the importance of collaboration and a whole-of-government approach in defeating crime. In conclusion, members of the media, this institution was built on the foundations of service, discipline, and constitutional duty. While corruption and criminal infiltration have caused damage, they will not define the future of SAPS. To the communities we serve across all 1,173 police stations in the Republic, to oversight institutions, to the youth of this country, to labor unions in policing, to business leaders, to private sector partners, and to every stakeholder in policing environment, we are urging you to become part of this reset agenda. Work with us, stand with us, and hold us accountable where it is necessary. I thank you.
Thank you very much to our Acting National Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, we are going to open it up to questions. May I kindly request that you state your name, the media house that you represent, and as far as possible, if you can also indicate as to which member of our panel here your question is posed. Just by a show of hands, may I please just see if we have any questions? I see Slee. Okay, I note the second hand, the third hand. Okay, so in that order, Slee, and then we'll take the lady who's sitting next to you, and then we'll take the last hand here. My colleague has the roving mic.
Hello everyone, Slee Ndabasibanda from EMCA. My question is posed to the new national head of this organized crime task team, Jill Mkhwanazi. I just want to know whether you have already begun in terms of forming your team. Are they based all in KZN? Are they part of the PKT team? I just need a better understanding as to how your tasking is actually operating, and whether either the acting commissioner or the police minister can respond to whether we have arrested all big five cartel. All big five cartel members, or are there still some that are outstanding? And then when it comes to the drugs, I mean, we're seeing about 11 people who appeared today, just alone, including some Mexicans. What is happening at OR Tambo? Do we actually have a grip on the drug mules that are coming through the country? Where's the crime intelligence? Thank you.
Thank you. Please pass the mic.
Hi, I'm Rinke Kanyane from Checkpoint from ENCA. This question is directed to the Minister. We've spoken to undocumented foreign nationals who say that police have no interest in arresting them because they make money out of them. And they say that police have caused this explosion of undocumented foreign nationals in South Africa. Can you respond to that, please?
Gamo, can we get the mic to come here in the front, please?
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm however from UFM. Can the minister clarify, this thing of citizen arrest? Where is the limit? seems to be a pattern where suspects don't make it out alive in KZN if they encounter police, but it's not happening elsewhere. I just want to understand how it works and how it happens. Does it mean that criminals in KZN are always charging at police, happen to be armed half the time? Even this notion that I'm sharing with you that it seems it happens there, is it correct to assess that it happens about in KZN than elsewhere in the country? Thank you.
Before I get the responses, do I have any last hand from the floor? After that, we're going to move to the online questions.
Thank you very much. Sam Obali, Newsroom Africa. My question goes to KZNPC. I just wanted to find out, since his address last year, July 6th, I think that was the date, with the interventions through the commission, the tasks that have informed the arrests that have been made, is he satisfied, or is he at a point where all that he revealed, at least the allegations, he feels satisfied to the interventions that have been made so far? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will start with the Minister responding to the questions. Thereafter, we will allow the Acting National Commissioner, and then we'll also then call upon the PC KZN. Minister? Yes, please, Minister, here.
Thank you for the questions. I think I'll deal with the questions relating to illegal immigration. There's no doubt that there are the policing of illegal immigration provides opportunities for corruption. And that is very concerning. I've had a lot of anecdotal evidence that is indeed what happens from time to time. So what the solutions might be, because those transactions take place in close proximity, if you like, very difficult to monitor. But I don't think that one can, we have to acknowledge that that is occurring. But the issues around illegal immigration, the challenge that the country faces, many countries do, is not caused by policing. I think that the challenge of strengthening border controls is part of that challenge. Some of the migration is driven by factors like economic migration. There are countries that are affected by instability and conflict. So what are the factors that drive immigration to our country? Within the region, we have complex historical relationships and dynamics. The countries that border South Africa, Mozambique, Lesotho, Botswana, Swaziland are countries that we have historical relationships with. And across a lot of those borders, there are mixed communities, in fact. However, the government is quite clear that there is an issue around illegal immigration that we have to address, because our communities, particularly poorer communities, are feeling the pressures from these population movements. But we've also got to do so in a way which respects the constitutional framework, the rights protections that are in place, and the imperative to have productive relationships with our regional, with the countries in our region, particularly talking about Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland. We need a respectful, constructive relationships with these countries. I've just come back, as I indicated, from Botswana, and this issue came up there about how we're dealing with illegal migration. And the authorities in Botswana have a view that we had to listen to. They were raising issues, for instance, about their citizens who come across the border, maybe for medical treatment, and then have difficulty getting back, and so forth. So it's a complex challenge for the country. The government is clear that undocumented migration is a serious problem, and that part of the way we respond to illegal immigration is through law enforcement. So the police have a particularly important role. People who are in this country and undocumented are here illegally, and they should expect that the law enforcement authorities will enforce the law. The issue of citizen arrest, let's be very clear. The police have a responsibility to enforce our immigration laws. People who have decided that they must act by themselves, to take the law into their own hands, to enter hospitals and schools, are acting unlawfully. And the police similarly have a responsibility to stop that. I want to insist that people, South African citizens, should not be taking the law into their own hands, should not be seeking to arrest undocumented criminals. That the police must do their work. They should not be entering hospitals and schools and deciding who's supposed to be in the country, who's not supposed to be in the country, who are entitled to services and who are not. That's the responsibility of the police. So there's no such thing as citizen arrest. They cannot respond to lawlessness with lawlessness, create an environment of anarchy in the country. That is not acceptable.
Thank you, Program Director. I have noted a few that I will respond to, and a few that are directly related to General Mkhwanazi who will come after me. Let me start with the question on crime intelligence. Where is crime intelligence on issues of drugs? Crime intelligence is available. I've outlined that this is an area where we have put our focus in terms of priority, such as filling of critical posts. However, all these operations that are taking place across the country are crime intelligence-led. You will note that even the success that we achieved in Northwest, this was a crime intelligence-led operation that made us to succeed in terms of that particular success in the Northwest. There was a question on whether General Mkhwanazi is satisfied with the progress. Perhaps let me jump on it as well. He will speak. As the leadership of SAPS, we are satisfied with progress that has been made since that particular statement. We are also encouraged by progress, and we believe that a lot of work still lies ahead of us, and we will do our work supporting the task team that is carrying out these duties without fear or favor. The police continue to do their work across the country, be it in KZN, Gauteng, and elsewhere, to ensure that we restore order and we enforce law and order in this particular regard. Where criminals refuse to abide by the law, the police will do their work. We have highlighted in our speaker notes that KwaZulu-Natal remains heavily affected by violent organized criminality and extortion-related violence, notwithstanding the progress that we have made. So that is a province that requires special attention, and we are prioritizing that province together with the other big provinces. We believe that if we do our work and we put our focus on these 4 big provinces, we will be able to make inroads at the end of this year. I think General Mkhwanazi can join and respond to those that are directly linked to him. Thank you, Program Director.
Thanks so much, Acting Minister. It's about the crime stats, but now I'm asking about my satisfaction on what happened last year. The answer, the Acting National Commission already responded to that. The only thing we wanted to achieve last year was to be given an opportunity to do that which we were employed to do as a police. To the extent that we saw that there were some blockages coming from within those with authority, that's why we had to go out public. So we have seen, since the intervention from the President and the Parliament and many structures of government, we are beginning to see cases enroll in court, and that is all what was a cry for us. Some criminals that were walking freely, they are now in custody. And we are seeing the beginning of the grinding of the criminal justice wheel as it's supposed to be. So, of course, there are a lot of work that needs to be done, but we hope that a lot will be achieved in this period. So I am satisfied. What makes KZN tactical operation different from any other policing provinces in as far as shooting is concerned? I don't know how to explain this. Every police officer is sent to the college and get trained on Criminal Procedure Act, and everyone gets to know how to apply Section 9 of that Criminal Procedure Act, the use of force. Maybe KZN are well trained on firearms. They maintain their training. I think Division HRD can confirm that. And they do understand the application of the Section 49 of the Act. So perhaps that's what makes them to survive. In a gunfight, the one who throws first is the one who survives. Whether the KZN criminals are branded worse than the others in the province, and I'm sure the recent shooting happened in Gauteng recently, but Gauteng has not been asked this question. And it was deadly, not just. The biggest shooting I think that's happened in the country for over 19 almost suspect was in Limpopo, not even in KZN. But questions seem to be directed in KZN. I do not know what's the reason. But nonetheless, shooting happens across the country. It happens. Police officers are trained to work. And it might happen that shooting happens in KZN. It might not necessarily be police officers that are based in KZN. We know that South African Police is a national department. Police officers moves around. You'll find Gauteng Police, Jerome Tomeni is tracing suspect in Gauteng, and he end up finding them in KZN, and he shoots them in KZN. He gets recorded as KZN, whereas it's Gauteng. So don't be confused. We might need to get the details exactly. Who's done the shooting? Is it KZN police or who? Because we work all across the board. We just don't communicate who was involved. We just simply say the police. However, I want to still encourage citizens to know that the government established IPIT for the reason. IPIT is there for the purpose of investigating the abuse of power by the police. So if you feel concerned about the conduct of police anywhere in the country, approach IPIT. And I hope they will do justice in investigating to find out exactly whether is it factual that police are abusing power, or is just a myth that is out there. So I want to invite you to use the services of IPIT. They are there for the reason. I know they're understaffed, Acting Minister. They still need more resources to help us, to keep us in shape. I'm not sure if I captured all these questions. There is a question about the work that I'm assigned to do here in Pretoria, whether the work has it started. I'm here. I'm sure you noticed that today I'm wearing a suit because organized crime mainly is about investigation. Perhaps that's the reason why I'm dressed like this. But I did come here. As started in April, we started coordinating this work in April. And we we are already hard at work in coordinating different teams that are on the ground. I'm sure you'll appreciate that the South African Police Service is given a mandate by the Constitution of the Republic. At Section 205, subsection 3, the primary contained there are three main things that need to be done by the police: the prevention of crime, the combating of crime, and the investigation of crime. So the South African Police Service, as we structure ourselves, the establishment of DPCI and the assignment of responsibility to different units, it creates silo operations within the police. So the National Commission have identified that these silo approaches that happens in the police, you have member of uniform branch on one side, detective branch on one side, intelligence on the other, forensic on the other, DPCI on the other. It creates that weaknesses in the system. So therefore, it is important for us to coordinate ourselves so that we have a united approach in dealing with organized crime. You'll see when you read Police Act, you'll find chapters that are specific on Section 16 on how we should deal with organized crime, how we must collaborate with each other to make sure that from the DPCI, provinces and units, how we should assist each other in fighting crime. The Constitution also forces us in terms of cooperation amongst departments to work together. So what we've seen as also gaps is how we coordinate our operations with the NPA in the main. That create weaknesses in the system. So in the South African Police Service, we're trying to coordinate ourselves, working with DPCI and different divisions in the police at the national level, so that we can create an approach that the acting minister that also invited us to not forget what has worked for us, the PKTT strategy that has been successful in our country. We basically bring all these teams together under one central command, and we focus on prioritization in terms of the syndicates that you need to tackle, and we deploy this entire team to go and tackle the syndicate in whatever province that we're going to assign them to go to. So that's what we are busy putting together at the national level. And we've got a command structure that we've set out. Myself, Gerald Nkosi from DPCI is part of it, and Gerald Sintumule, I think Gerald Kumalo, Gerald Mamuteti, amongst others. They are going to be part of the core command that is going to work in looking at the job that is going to be done by these teams that we're going to put it out there. So a PKTT approach is what is going to help us, because we are dealing with priority crimes that are affecting the country that you need to prioritize. So that is basic, in short, how I'm going to summarize the work that we're going to be doing. But the work has already started. The teams that the Acting National Commission was talking about, with the successes that they've already achieved, they're going to be part of what they're doing. Maybe in closing, the acting minister says that the PKTT will have been known as established for the purpose of political-related cases. But for the bigger part of the work that they've been doing, we've discovered through analysis that every crime or criminal case that they were dealing with is organized. Mr. Sindiso Magagwa, the famous late politician that was killed in KZN, has caused so much noise in the country. The murder of that gentleman was not mere political competition, but it was corruption. Corruption within municipality. So that's why we might have convicted the killer, but we are not done on that case, because it's corruption that we're dealing with. And many other cases where people are killed, it's not necessarily because of just simple political competition, but it's because of corruption. So organized crime that we are employing is going to go to that extent, and in the land and brand of the country and abroad. So thank you so much. I hope I've answered everything.
Thank you very much, General. Ladies and gentlemen, I do beg your indulgence. We have a few questions from our WhatsApp group. The first question, Deputy Minister Nel. Given the recent incident in Mpumalanga where a prosecutor reported feeling unsafe while on duty at a magistrate's court, what immediate steps is your department taking to assess and strengthen the safety and security of prosecutors and court officials in magistrates' courts nationwide? Specifically, are there plans to review security protocols, increase physical security measures, and provide additional support mechanisms for prosecutors who face threats in the course of their duties? And that's from the Gauteng Network, Sindiso Mhlabati. The next question we have Does the SAPS keep statistics or data of crime committed by South Africans versus non-South Africans? That's from Eyewitness News, Thabiso Goba. Lisa Lee Solomon's News 24 is asking the Minister, in September 2025, at the Mitchells Plain Police Station in Cape Town, the Minister boldly stated that there was no clear plan in place to tackle gang violence. The Minister also instructed senior police officials to develop a strategy and present it to him. Can the Minister advise whether there is now a gang violence strategy in place? Have any presentations or progress reports been submitted by the officials since then? The next question is from Mfanelo Zanibe, Tembisa Online News. How is the SAPS planning to address the matter where there are arrests made, but the courts set the suspects free even before making it to the court roll, especially in kidnapping cases? The next question says, we've seen various March and March Action SA protests calling for protesters to wear masks and not record anything. How prepared is the SAPS for the June 30 protests? Then we have a question from BBC News, Kanyisile. Minister, we've seen several arrests in recent months by the task team established as a result of the Madlanga Commission. While these arrests have been made by the task team, we understand that these arrests have no relation to the hearings at this stage. Why make these arrests now, and do you rule out more arrests being brought against the accused down the line? The next question, is the decrease in the crime statistics attributed to a broad systemic shift in police capacity, or is it localized results of targeted hotspot interventions? And the last question has a number of questions in it. We have a question from Tamsanga from the Daily Sun. First question, how many police reservists do we have in South Africa and across police stations? Second part, have the police fulfilled their promise of automatic or unconditional integration of these reservists? If not, why not? What are the steps being taken to ensure that reservists are quickly integrated? A Northwest source tells me that quite a number of suspects in the CITs across the country are former police reservists that got training from the SAPS. Can the SAPS confirm or deny? And the last question, how does the failure to integrate reservists into the SAPS negatively influence the police work? Some have been with the SAPS for over 20 years, yet still continue to face ill treatment, delayed payments while working on serious crimes, including murder. Those are the questions that we have. DM, are you ready? Okay, we can take the DM.
No, thank you very, very much to the network for a very, very relevant question, because much as our responsibility as the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster is to defend the people of South Africa in line with the Constitution, starting is to also ensure that those who form part of the JCPS are safe and can carry on discharging their duties without fear, favor, or prejudice. In that regard, I want to take a step back and before I get to prosecutors, say that as the department, we work very, very closely with the South African Police Service to provide security to our judicial officers. South African Police Service is responsible for conducting threat assessments. The department itself does provide private security in certain instances to safeguard judicial officers who are under threat. Secondly, with regard to prosecutors, similarly, we would rely on the South African Police Service to do threat assessments and, where necessary, also to assist in providing security. The Minister has been very, very passionate in advancing the cause of ensuring that prosecutors are safe. We have had a number of cases where prosecutors have been killed. The Minister has attended and spoken at those funerals and also made an appeal to the media to be judicious in how they televise court proceedings and, as far as possible, to avoid focusing on judicial officers and prosecutors. Together with the Minister of Police, we have also intervened in a number of violent hotspots, in particular in the Western Cape, where there have been shootings outside the court precincts, working to increase visible policing and also to bring mobile stations at some of those courts to make sure that our courts can be sanctuaries where people feel safe to seek justice. Thanks.
Once again, thank you for the question. So, when I first visited the Western Cape, I think it was in November last year. Was that the first time? September. And it followed some incidents in Mitchell's Plain, Philippi, in those gang areas. And I got a briefing then from the provincial commissioner, and I came to the conclusion that the police were struggling to bring the gangs under control because there was an issue around the resourcing of the anti-gang units. I wasn't convinced that there was access to the kind of intelligence that is needed to infiltrate the gangs and so forth. So I then said publicly that what I thought, because I think that the community understood what I was saying. That it was confirmed by their own experience. I came back to Gauteng, shared that view with colleagues in the criminal justice cluster, and got to work firstly on reformulating an organized crime strategy. I can confirm now that that strategy has been concluded, and that the South African Police Service has done excellent work. I'm confident that that's the right strategy. But the strategy has to be properly resourced and implemented. So what were the further steps that we then took? You will see in the MTF, in our budget, you can look at that budget to see to what extent resources are being made available to fund the implementation of that strategy. We got an allocation of R1 billion from what I call the CARA funds. Those are funds that are collected through law enforcement and asset forfeitures. So using those funds to fight the gangs and organized crime in general. And the ministers then agreed to allocate R1 billion. We will still be able to go back to that CARA committee for very specific projects to support the resourcing of the implementation of the organized crime strategy, because the government is committed to this project and we understand that it's a priority. Next, the appointment of General Mkhwanazi at national level to head the priorities committee. to me, he's demonstrated his boldness, and I thought he has the qualities of leadership that are going to be required to implement the strategy. So his appointment at national level was part of the implementation of the organized crime strategy. The ministers can't do it. We need professional police officers with the experience, the orientation, the lead capabilities to implement. Now, we are in the process of discussing what else needs to be done, what resources are needed. Those are questions that General Mkhwanazi and the newly appointed National Commissioner are going to have to answer. Those, if you like, are operational matters. But we have an engagement about what resources are required. Are the anti-gang units properly resourced? I have my doubts about that. I think that's a question that need to be looked at. And I also think that this PKTT model, insofar as it brings together experienced investigators and prosecutors at the very beginning of the case, is a model that can work not only with police killings, but with organized crime in general. But those are decisions that the police leadership must take. We will engage them, ask them questions, and so forth, but the decisions about how to implement the organized crime strategy will be made by them. The role of the executive of the government is to provide impetus, to provide resources, and to provide leadership appropriate to our constitutional role. Then I would like to make the point that the implementation of the organized crime strategy has to be supported by a reset agenda. So the work that General Sentumule must do to strengthen detective services, the work that must be done to strengthen forensics, the work that has to be done to strengthen crime intelligence. General Dimpane already reported that as part of the reset agenda, we have received a plan. We haven't yet studied it in detail. We haven't yet implemented it, but refocusing and capacitating crime intelligence is part of the reset agenda. So you need to look at the front desk and see a team of leadership. You have a new acting national commissioner. You have the leadership, the General Sentumule looking at detective services, at forensics. You have General Mkhwanazi looking at the overall responsibility for organized crime together with General Nkosi. And of course, General Mosekiri, who's not here, is the chair of the net joints. So the implementation of an effective organized crime strategy is going to require teamwork. And I think that the country should try to look at now the SAPS leadership as a team, as a collective, who are there, who are supported by the ministry. That's why the alignment between, when we talk about the reset agenda, between the ministry and police management is so important. And I have to say, I'm excited about this now. I think we are at a point where that alignment has happened. The conceptual, the policy alignment is there, the commitment is there, and now it's for General Dimpane to take the police forward into what I hope is going to be a new era. Thank you.
There are a few questions that are remaining that I will share with the head of the PCI, as well as visible policing. There was a question on whether we keep separate stats to indicate who has committed which crime. Crime is crime. When it is reported, it is investigated, and we arrest. So we do not have separate stats. What is our relationship with the prosecution teams? We do have forums where we engage with the prosecutors. Our investigations, most of them are prosecutor-led. We do have engagements, and we work very closely with the Office of the NDPP, as well as the DPPs and the prosecutors in provinces. Are we prepared already for the upcoming March? The answer is yes. We are always ready and prepared to ensure that we maintain public order in the Republic. We have our POP units ready and trained to ensure that there is stability in this particular country. Each and every province has POP units that are trained and are always ready to ensure that we police all the marches and we protect the property as well as the citizens of this country. On the CIT.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Minister, and the media. Well, the questions on the cash in haste transit, or the CITs, cash in transit haste. The question that came was to say reservists who are trained to do policing are to an extent believed to be involved in these violent crimes. Well, we welcome the information, but we will obviously have to do proper profiling to find out whether the criminals that we know and those which we have addressed up to so far are indeed former reservists in the police. But former reservists or active reservists, they are also bound by the code of conduct, but we obviously do all our best as the South African Police Service to vet these individuals. We would not be hiring criminals to come and to be part of us as reservists. But yes, it is a statement that we note with concern, and it is a statement that we will follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to add on what General Nkosi was addressing on the issues of the reservists. How many do we have? I won't be able to give the figures now, but I can confirm that we have reservists through all the country at all the police stations. 1,173 police stations have the reservist. This is a voluntary service, and we really appreciate those people that are working with us to assist us in the fight against crime. And we are encouraging the community, especially those that are meeting the criteria, to join the reservist platform. I just want to emphasize again that this is not a platform where we create a come and assist us, and those people, they have to generate hours. During the month, they are expected to at least generate 16 hours of working with us. And in that period, then they become active. And only when they are called up by the National Commissioner, they will be able to get paid. So I just want to emphasize the fact that it's not an employment per se, but is a voluntary, which we really appreciate. But also, again, that we can also pay them when they are being called by the National Commissioner to assist maybe in a situation where we are having the elections or in a major events where we need their services. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Minister and Deputy Ministers, Acting National Commissioner, members of the media. I'm Lieutenant General Michael Moshala, currently standing in for General Musikiri, but I'm actually the Divisional Commissioner for Protection and Security Services. Mine is to deal with the issue of the recent anti-sentiments for March and March and other formations. Just to also re-emphasize the fact that as NAT joins, in all the 9 provinces, we have stability priority committees. And equally, nationally, we also have the stability committee. The role of the stability committee, priority committees, is to deal with all protests. So these committees are functional on a 24-hour basis. So in terms of our preparation for the upcoming March of the 30th, as South African Police Service, together with the NAT joints, we are ready. We are ready now. Actually, we are ready 24/7 as the NAT joints. Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have 5 questions from the GCIS Media WhatsApp group. Vanessa, if I can ask you to just read those questions out, please.
Shannon Nicole Merritt from Tri-CBC Africa has questions for the Minister. Why do cases against ward councillors in Eldos, Pittown, Riverlea, Westbury never go to court? Why does the SAPS and SANDF inform ward councillors about raids by SAPS and SADF? When these people send info to gangs and criminals and even spaza shop owners, should ward councillors not go for vetting because some might be on the payroll of gangs and criminals? The rest of the questions are from Khaukelo Makomeko from UFM. Does the Police Ministry have any frustrations with the Criminal Procedure Act, particularly the rights it extends to accused persons, particularly being released on bail? I'm asking this because there appears to be a sentiment out there that the granting of bail means the end of the case. Do you perhaps believe there should be more restrictions to rights of accused persons? In the same light, kindly reflect on the role of parolees in the commission of crime. Again, at face value, it appears to be easy to be paroled, and once out, it doesn't look like these offenders repent. The last question is the murder of Tabulo Sangwe seen as related to his anti-crime activism? Just a bit of an update on that investigation, if there's any, please. That's all we have.
Thank you. Minister?
I'm not entirely sure I understood the question, but was the question that ward councillors are being informed about?
Okay, so the first question, why do the murders of ward councillors, particularly Eldorado Park, Riverlea, why do those cases not seemingly make it to court? So
I'm not sure that that it's correct, that perception is correct, that councillors in those areas, Riverlea and so forth, are the ones whose cases are not properly investigated. There may well be such cases where councillors have been murdered, and those cases have not been investigated to the point where the perpetrators have been brought to book and prosecuted and so forth. But that is a general problem. A lot of councillors, public officials, whistleblowers have been assassinated in this country, and those cases have not been, in many cases, the perpetrators have not been brought to book. So I share the concerns of the questioner, but I don't agree that the problem is one that affects the specific communities alone. Yeah.
And then there was also a concern that information that is
Yes.
given.
Yes. And the second question concerns information about law enforcement operations being shared with councillors. Politicians, members of parliament, councillors have no role in law enforcement operations. Those operations are carried out by the police and by our defense force. And so, you know, I'm aware of some cases where apparently politicians have become involved in those operations. I think that's inappropriate and should be avoided.
Minister, the last one was about the rights of accused persons. Does the Minister think that there should be a limitation? Is Minister contrary to the provisions of the Criminal Procedure Act? I think it takes us back to the Constitution to say.
Again, I'm not sure I understood the question fully, but accused persons, the right to a fair trial is absolutely fundamental in a democracy. Otherwise, we're back to self-help. We're back to people taking the law into their own hands. I understand frustration sometimes because often it's the case that members of the community might feel that they have the information about who the perpetrators are. They take their, and then take action themselves by effecting citizens' arrests and so forth. I think the right thing to do is to report, share that information with the police and report those cases. When a person is accused in a modern society, in democratic society, that person should be, the charges should be investigated. If the prosecuting authorities come to the conclusion that there is a case against that person should appear in court, have all the rights of an accused person to legal representation, for instance. Evidence has to be led against that person in open court, and the investigative and prosecuting branches of the state have to convince a judge, an independent judge, that the person is guilty of the offense charged. That is absolutely essential. But I do want to say that when it comes to organized crime in particular, we should not be prevented from looking at the law, looking at whether the law in its current form fits every case of organized crime. I mean, for instance, we're dealing with cartels. We're dealing with people who can intimidate witnesses. And in many countries, or at least in some countries where they have faced organized crime as a particular kind of crime, amendments to the law, this ordinary law, if you like, have been considered in order to make it possible for the investigative authorities and the prosecutorial authorities to succeed in complex cases of corruption and organized crime. We have to have a discussion with the Department of Justice along those lines. These are my initial thoughts. I think that it is perhaps worth looking at whether the law in some areas, given that overall framework which protects the legitimate rights of accused persons, needs some creative thinking and application in cases where it's very difficult to secure convictions because of the nature of the crime, nature of organized crime, and so forth. But I'm perhaps, introducing a matter prematurely because we haven't really done the research yet to enable me to arrive at some conclusions. But my own intuition is that it's too difficult at the moment to investigate those complex cases of corruption and organized crime, and then we see that the prosecutors don't bring cases successfully, and that causes a lot of disillusionment among our people. But it's very difficult to secure those convictions. That's part of the problem, and I think it perhaps should be made easier without compromising the rights of accused persons.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I do believe that we have kept you for far too long on a Friday. I would like to thank the panel for their attendance. I would also like to thank you, members of the media, for your attendance and participation. The media briefing is concluded. Thank you.